All right, so now that we've got our ship script created, we're going to go ahead and open that up by double clicking it or selecting it and clicking the open button in the top right. Then we're going to switch over to our Visual Studio, or again, whatever we're using to edit our code. And we're going to full screen that. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, make it a little easier to see for you. That's good. Okay. So now that we've got our script open, what we need to start with is writing our variables. So there's a few of them we need to write here, as well as a couple of, put some code into our void and start and void update methods. But to start with the variables, what we need to do is we need a public transform array, which those two brackets means that we want an array of transforms, which is essentially a group of multiple transforms. And we're going to call that sail trans. And don't forget those semicolons at the end of every single line. Those are very important. We're also going to add a public float boat speed. And again, make sure we're getting the capital letters for the second word. The first word is lowercase, the second word is uppercase. Just copy it the way I have it exactly. That's vitally important to your code being checked properly by the check setup button. And we're going to set that boat speed equal to 10. And again, semicolons at the end of every line. Now we're going to give ourselves a little space because those are the only two public variables we have. We now need to have some private variables. So our private variables are going to be float sea level, which is going to hold where the sea or where we enter the sea with our boat. We need a vector3, which is an x, y, and z value. We're going to call that my scale. That's going to hold the scale of our object. We need a rigid body, rigid. That's going to be the rigid body that moves our boat. We need a float sail height. We're going to set that equal to 0.1f. We also need a bool or a boolean that says floating. We're going to set that equal to false. And a bool or boolean called piloted, we're going to set that equal to false. And again, don't forget those semicolons at the end of everything. Don't forget this F here that just tells our code that we're using a float, which is a type of number value. Once you've got all those variables there, we're going to put a little bit of code in our start and our update here. So the start function, we're going to add my scale is equal to get component, which is a method or a function that allows us to get access to something attached to the object that our script is on. So in this case, we're getting the box collider. And we got to have it inside those angled brackets there. That's very important. And then at the end, we just need an empty open and close parentheses. And that tells the code that get component is a method, just like start or update. That's the code that this is going to execute. So we need those open and close parentheses. And then we're going to hit dot size. And dot size is going to turn this vector3 in my scale into the size, the x, y, and z size of our box collider. And then what we need to do is do the same thing for rigid. We're going to say rigid equals get component, rigid body, and open and close parentheses. And this time we don't need dot anything. We can just add our semicolon. And again, make sure we are not forgetting those semicolons. Oh, and also make sure you have a lowercase b for rigid body, because it's all one word. It's not rigid space body. It's just one word, rigid body. And that's it for our start function. Then inside our update, what we need to do is say for each, which is a type of loop that will grab each of an object inside an array. And so we have this array of sail transforms. So what we're going to say is for each transform trans in sail trans. So that's what that means is that this loop will the code inside these two curly brackets, and these are very important, don't forget these. The code for each, or this code inside the curly brackets will execute for each transform that's in the array. So I think we're going to have 2 or maybe 4 transforms inside that array. we need to make sure that we're executing code on each of them. So now inside of our curly brackets here, we're going to write vector3 scale equals trans.local scale. And again, that trans is our transform, that's each transform inside our transform array. So we have this vector3 that we're setting equal to each transform scale. We're then setting the y value of their scale, so scale.y, setting that equal to sail height, that variable, that float variable that we made earlier. And that's going to make it so we can change how high our sails are, so we can lower and raise our sails as we need to. Finally, what we need to do is add trans.localScale, the value we just got at the top there. We're going to say trans.localScale, and we're going to set that back equal to scale. And with that, we're doing that because we can't actually change local scale directly. Like we can't change the y value directly. We have to do it by reference, which means the reference is the vector3 scale here. We're referencing our local scale, we're changing its y value, and then we're setting our transform's local scale equal to the updated value. So yeah, that's it for this step. And in the next step, we're going to be you're going to be getting some code from your teacher. You'll need to show them this once you're done, and they will give you some code to add in the next step.